Comic Podcast. My name is Tyler Bublitz, and welcome back to the birthday podcast for the week of the 7th anniversary of the podcast. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited for this week's podcast, and I'm excited to give you kind of the updates on what is all going on and where are we kind of looking at going for this year. It's been a wild and crazy year this year, and there are some milestones that are worth talking about. There's a little bit that's worth reflecting on. There's some things that I need to update you on, and let's talk about it a little bit. There's been a couple things that I've purposely kind of held back, and I purposely kind of hold it back for this episode in particular because I feel like if you're willing to dig into this podcast, the non-weekly podcast, I feel like you're the loyal fans, the ones who are really care what's going on, and I think that's where this podcast kind of goes into that a little bit more. 2024 has been a crazy year, a good year, crazy year, but a good year. So let's start with some of the statistics here for this year. We were just short of 4,900 downloads, which I was really impressed with this year. We had 38 countries plus 4 unknowns, which is awesome, and our highest month, we did break over 1,000 downloads for the month of October. We had 1,065. So awesome year for me. And if you want to go by U.S. states, Minnesota, California, Delaware, Virginia, and Wisconsin bring out the top 5 for the year. This is always kind of exciting for me being on the back end, kind of being able to see a lot of this stuff and kind of see how things have grown and evolved. And for me, it's exciting. For me, I feel like there is continued reach and growth that is happening, and I feel like there is continued value. I know there's been multiple different people who I have talked to this year who have started following the podcast just a little bit more this year, and I really appreciate it. And I know it's still providing value, it's still providing support, and that's the whole purpose of it. That's the whole value of it. Yes, we can get caught up in the numbers of all of it, but that's really not the point of it. The point of it is to continue to bring God's message to other people, and how are we seeing God working in the world of science today and being able to bring that to people. So that's part of that. I think one of the things that it's also worth talking about that I've kind of referenced in years past, but I haven't directly come out and said. I formally worked at a church the last 5.5 years, and that changed this year. It was a mutual parting of the ways. There was a couple reasons where I needed to just step back. And one of the things that I continue to plan on doing is providing this podcast. I see that as something for me that's still super valuable, but I just needed a little bit of time to be able to focus on a little bit of personal growth within my own self with my faith. And instead of trying to lead others, I felt like I could be more useful actually from the pews, like I talk about in the podcast. And with that, there's been some challenges learning a new job. I work remote, so that changes some things a little bit. It's also opened up some different doors, and that was part of the reason that I also kind of looked into somewhat of a career shift that way as well, along with some other personal reasons as well. And in that, there's a couple things that I'm hoping to try this year. I'm not necessarily 100% ready to open the door on everything, but what I will say is there'll be a couple additional social media channels in which you'll be able to find the podcast or find some content. And if you don't already know, we are on Facebook, we are on X, we are on LinkedIn, and I'm looking to add to that list. There's a couple that I'm working on right now as we speak and figuring out how I'm going to be doing that. I would also say that my plan is this year, I'm hoping to be able to upgrade some hardware for me, partially just to make the editing process and things a little bit quicker, easier. Also, hopefully there'll be a little bit of a sound improvement. I know that's kind of the nerdy side of me that I get into kind of the gear aspects of things, but I've been using the same mic for 7 years, and I figure I want to try getting something that's a little bit nicer than what I'm running right now. And we'll see if that gets some upgrade to sound quality as well. I'm hoping in the second half of the year to experiment with something, and I'm really hoping to get some feedback, and I'll give you some more insight into that as it comes up, but I will at least put out a teaser. What I'm hoping to do is to try a couple interview podcasts. There's a couple people that I'm thinking about reaching out to and talking to and seeing if we can do that. If there's some additional people you think would be good, that'd be awesome. What I'm thinking about for this type of interview podcast is looking at people who work in science or have worked in science, and how does that interact with their faith. So taking kind of the concepts of what we have from the weekly basis and having a more deeper conversation with that. I know there's been a couple people who I've had that conversation with and found really fruitful for myself. And I know from talking to different people that there is some interest that would be really interesting to hear and to have and to talk about and have documented. And so that's what I'm looking at trying. And with that, I'm really hoping that we can get a little deeper and have some deep conversations and get into some things. And those will definitely be a little bit longer, I think, most of the time than that half an hour, but really have some deep conversation. And I think that's really important and vital in a lot of different ways. So I'm excited about what that will bring, and I'll give you a little bit more as that comes down the line. In all this, and in trying to do all this, there's a lot of people who I have to thank. First and foremost, my wife. She realizes more than anybody the amount of time, work, effort that it takes to be able to do something like this. The amount of sacrifice that it has with ourselves and being able to sit in front of the mic and work on editing and different things like that. So I really thank my wife for allowing me to be able to do that and continue to bring this to you. And I also want to thank a lot of family who's been really helpful to continue to provide support. There's been a couple different people in particular, like my parents this last year, who have been helpful in figuring out different ways to help make processes a little bit smoother, to be able to hopefully take on a little bit more and get ahead of things a little bit more for the benefit of everybody, and to allow for the possibility of having another type of podcast is critical for that type of processing. But I also want to really thank the listener, you on the other end. I really appreciate being able to hear from you guys. I say some of this is my own selfish ambition, being able to dig into this week after week. And I love being able to hear feedback from anybody saying that, yeah, this was beneficial. This was something that I enjoyed. This is something that I found that was of benefit to me. And so I really appreciate those who do reach out with those comments, and keep them coming. There's lots of different social channels. There's email, and that's all part of this. One of the other things that I will say that I'm looking at and I haven't figured out entirely for this next year is, with trying to do some additional expansion of the podcast and trying some different things, one of the things that I'm planning on trying is maybe a little advertising. So if you are somebody who has a business or something that you feel like would be a mutual beneficial relationship, shoot me an email. Also probably be looking at, so you might be hearing a few ads or something along the way on seeing how that's all going to work. But I'm giving you a little bit of forewarning because, yet again, I know it's become typical, but part of it is also to help in support. I'm hoping that there's some additional ways throughout the year that we can figure out that maybe help with some additional support, because there is some costs that I put into this and withstand within all of this. But I really do enjoy bringing this to you, and that's why I do it. But I also would really enjoy potentially having something coming in on that. I also want to shout out like Gustavus Adolphus College, and it's been awesome the last couple of years being able to work with them and being part of Gus Davis Academy for Faith, Science, and Ethics. It's been amazing. And again, if there are other speaking engagements that you know of that you would like me to be part of, shoot me an email. I'd love to be part of that and to be in conversation about that to see if it would be beneficial for both sides. Yes, this 2025, as I look at it, is a year of growth. It's a year of new ways of connecting with you guys. It's a year of trying some new things and trying to move forward in a little bit different way. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about what we've been able to accomplish. In fact, this last week was a huge milestone for the podcast, whether you realize it or not. I've been looking forward to this last Sunday. The one we just dropped today, as you're probably listening, is 12/30/24, was episode 366, which means there is now a Faith and Science podcast for every single day of the year. You could listen to one every single day of the year now and still be listening to the current one while having this devotion. So I'm really excited about that. That's been something that's been super cool for me to watch. And as we get closer to that number, realizing that is a significant milestone, at least to myself. When you are in this for 7 years, every single week, you have to figure out some of these milestones that get you excited. You have to keep figuring out ways and goals to keep moving you forward. I still feel the goals and stuff that I had set for myself and the reason on why I did this podcast and started this podcast are still evident today and all the more evident now. I truly and solemnly believe that part of what the church is needing is being able and willing to confront talking about science in the church. Without it, I truly believe that there continues to be a separation of faith and real life. And I believe that this is one way to help with bridging that gap. That's a major reason why I keep doing it. But along the way, I've also found that it's a documentary of my life. As I've done this for 7 years, and as I am now 33 years old, a lot of life has happened. As I kind of mentioned a little bit with some of the podcasts, I had to pre-record here a little bit at the end of December, and I don't do that typically. And as part of my quote-unquote break and spending some time with family, and as I was kind of stating, working on some other social media channel stuff, one of the things that I ended up having to do was listening back to some stuff of my old stuff and hearing 26-year-old me on the microphone talking, listening about what is going on and how I'm seeing things. As I've talked with close friends, I've stated that this has kind of become a little bit of a diary for me. This is my moment that I sit and I talk and communicate with God. This is one of my holy spaces as I sit here and talk with you each week. But I also have found that there's a lot of life that has happened, that some I've talked about more blatantly than others. Some I've kind of kept coded that I know if I listen back, I know what's going on. I can figure it out. And it's one of those things too that I look at the potential of my future children being able to look back and hear where was their father's faith at different stages of life and the value of what that is. But I also see it as the value of how are we processing faith at different times. We've gone through a pandemic together. We've gone through crazy world events together. And we continue to figure out ways on how faith and science are not two separate entities, but they are things that are actually closely tied together. Why? Because the science continues to show a reason of faith, continues to show how God maybe did it, and helps us to give more questions on why did God do it that way. And I love that. I love that aspect of this podcast week after week as the curiosity continues to grow. And if you have any news articles or anything that you find, shoot them. There's multiple different ways that you can reach out to me. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to read what you are shooting my way on some different ideas that you have and seeing if there's a way that maybe this is something worth talking about in the podcast. It's super helpful. After 7 years, it's a lot of research and a lot of time and a lot of spending on lots of different things to make sure that you're keeping up with it. But I also see it as important work. The more we prepare for that sermon on Sunday morning by knowing those readings, going through those readings, having different ideas about those readings, the more you actually get out of it. The deeper we actually are able to get into those texts, the more alive this faith actually becomes. And I'm truly thankful that you've been along for the whole ride of this. And as we look to 25, as we celebrate the podcast birthday, I look forward to doing this all again and continuing the second cycle so you could listen to 2 podcasts a day, though that's going to take quite a while to get there. But thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the responses. Thank you for seeing insight in this. Thank you for being able to be a part of this. Whether you're in the United States or somewhere else, we've reached around the globe, and that's amazing to me. Getting to places that I probably never will get to, but my voice has been able to reach them. And God's Spirit continues to move around this planet in a way that we can't fully always understand. Thank you. Thank you, God, for the ability to be able to do that. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Thank you for listening to this vessel just continue to recite and repeat what God is trying to share with you. I'm excited for 25. There's big things that I am trying to do for you, and I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited that hopefully some of these announcements are really quick and soon in the future. Some of them might be throughout the year sprinkled in. So buckle up. Here we go, because I'm excited for what 25 is going to bring. I'm excited to go in exciting new directions on wherever God takes this thing. God's the one steering this thing. It's not me. It's been that way for a long time. But I'm excited to see where this goes, and I'm excited to take you along for the ride. So jump on. Whether you've listened to this is your first podcast, or you've been listening to every single one and all the special editions, welcome. I'm excited. And let's see where 25 takes us. And so, we'll wrap this up as we always do. I pray God blesses you through your faith and amazes you through science.